Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hi, Lisa K. Donner here from LibertyNation.com, and today we offer up a roundtable discussion on constant protests and their ineffectuality. Joining me are Legal Affair Editor Scott Cosenza, Editor-at-Large James Fite, and National Correspondent and expert in all things political, Sarah Cowgill. Welcome, everyone. Since President Trump has been elected, it's been resist, march, protest. This week we saw young people from all over the country protesting their right to bear arms. Let's start with Scott. Do you think these large rallies and spectacles are beginning to lose their impact on the public? Have people just had enough?
Well, I think that it all comes down to the electoral prospects. P.J. O'Rourke called the Congress a parliament of whores, and I think that's an accurate description. And to the extent that these people can motivate in-district opposition is to the extent that they'll be listened to. And the extent that they gather nationally, I think just doesn't hold sway in the districts to move the needle in terms of actually moving the needle for legislation or results from their perspective.
Sarah, we know that the latest March for Our Lives was sponsored by big names such as George Clooney, Oprah Winfrey, Bloomberg, and the other usual suspects, and I suspect Soros was in there somewhere. Could these protests realistically be described as grassroots anymore?
No, there's nothing grassroots about it. And, you know, in all honesty, I don't believe anybody but a liberal paid attention to this last one with the kids marching because everybody knew it was a setup. They were busting, they were paid, they were organized. I mean, 17-year-old kids probably couldn't pull that off, and everybody knew that. And the media loved it, and the left loved it, but there's no grassroots in any of that. There wasn't in the protest after the inauguration. There hasn't been in any of the Dreamer protests. Somebody is picking up the tab. It can't be considered grassroots anymore.
So then, Sarah, just following up, would you call these fake rallies to go with fake news?
I'd call them public relations stunts because that's what they are.
Good point. Jim, if we take the view that protests are now more media events, as Sarah was saying, for the purpose of selling airtime, what methods of protest are left that actually will have some benefit or impact?
I question the efficacy of the protests like this anyways. I can only speak for myself and the people I know out here in the wilderness. We look at folks marching on D.C. and we're like, yeah, so what? Go back to work. No one cares.
Well, that's the problem. Maybe they don't have jobs.
Well, it's like the whole Occupy Wall Street thing. Obviously, they didn't have jobs. But as far as what's more effective, I mean, doing the grunt work, getting out there and getting petitions signed and actually working on legislation and getting things enacted, that's what's going to do things, not running around showing off.
Okay, open forum here. What's the real reason behind the protest marches we've been seeing since Donald Trump was elected?
He's Mr. Teflon. They're looking for anything that might stick, and throwing a, cute little fresh-faced kid in front of the camera, they're getting a little, desperate. They're using children now. They were using illegals. Now they're using children. I think it's just complete stinks of desperation.
I think it's
I'm a center on that one. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say that I think it's a virtue signaling operation, that they are demonstrating in-group preferences, and those preferences are that we don't like Donald Trump, and that makes you part of the group, and you get to signal your virtue as being part of that group by saying we should, march for, I don't know, women's whatever, because Donald Trump is elected. Sort of like I was looking actually before we started today at the more recent high number marches, and it was funny that so many of them were previous to now. They were during the Bush administration. There was like an major anti-war Bush march. Well, Barack Obama killed many more, the U.S. military killed many more people under Barack Obama, dropped many more bombs, but there were almost, no marches. Well, why is that? Well, there's no virtue in the signaling to march there. So I don't think it's as much about principle as it is about that, about tribe and showing virtue.
Jim, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's also, we have to take into effect who's actually doing this. Scott made a good point when he said, that we haven't really seen marches like this since the Bush years. The kind of people that are getting out and marching, they're not really doing anything. It's much easier to just scream at the sky and complain and hope that something will happen.
It's also a good tool, Lisa. It's also a good tool for those who are largely ignorant of the problem, right? So most of these people who are at the Second Amendment the gun march, I don't think they could actually tell you in any way that was clear and demonstrated an understanding of what the current gun laws are, how they're ineffectual, and when they say they want to ban certain weapons. And I don't mean a gunsmith's understanding. I just mean a sort of reasonable person understanding about what are the differences. Why should one gun be banned over another? And that just makes for an unserious discussion, right? You don't even know what you're talking about. So that's another thing, I think.
Yeah, well, I saw one report where the guy was asked what an assault weapon was, and he couldn't answer that.
The New York Times published a op-ed by John Paul Stevens arguing for the repeal of the Second Amendment this week, and in the photo that ran with the piece, they placed a rifle where they wanted to place a musket or the reverse, and then they had to issue a correction. And it just goes to show you, even on that piece, they can't get it right. They don't even know the difference between a rifle and a musket. And these are people who want one of those things to be banned, and they can't even identify this very major difference that doesn't take an expert's eye.
Well, that's, Sarah, like you said, it doesn't take a... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Like you said, Scott, it doesn't take a gunsmith's knowledge. You don't have to be able to argue terminal ballistics to know that, okay, hey, let's ban all semi-automatic weapons. Well, hey, that's most revolvers these days.
Right. So, Sarah, in the past, there were marches like ML King's I Have a Dream on the Mall. But have we reached the saturation point? I mean, ML King didn't bring millions to the nation's capital over and over again.
I think so. I think they're ineffectual in that people are tuning it out, except for the media and the liberals who are applauding the media's coverage of it. For instance, there were maybe 10% of the students, of actual students involved in the March for Life versus MLK's March on Washington. And even that was a coordinated effort. I mean, a bunch of black people and white people just didn't get together and go, hey, let's go do this. It was coordinated. But they had more to fight for. The kids, they're promoting that this is a children's march. It was completely a lie. It was not a children's march. It was a reason to do it again and to have the media cover it on a different angle. And because, people are stopping, viewing of CNN. They're tuning out. They protested the NFL by tuning out. They've protested the award shows by turning the TV off. So they're looking for ways to, wiggle around and get some attention. It's just not going to work anymore.
All right. Who wants the last word?
Probably Scott.
Well, I will take it, and I will just say to those people who wish to effectuate change on either side, you have to get to the ballot box. And marches are good, but and one of the reasons why I expect it and hope that we will not see significant change in this area in terms of restriction of rights is that while support for gun control is broad and shallow, opposition to it is narrow and very, very deep. And those people go to the polls, they take a friend, they write a check, they do all those things which matter when it comes to the actual rubber meeting the road. And I expect we'll see more of the same in November.
Well, thank you, Sarah, Jim, and Scott, and thank you for watching another Roundtable edition of LNTV. Please make sure to comment and give us your thumbs up or thumbs down on our Liberty Nation YouTube channel, and stop by LibertyNation.com for all the latest conservative news and analysis. I'm Lisa K. Donner, and this is LNTV.
Liberty Nation, news and commentary, minus the propaganda. LibertyNation.com.